Hello, everyone. We're here to talk about reinventing game launches. Before we go into it, the mandatory "Who am I" slide. My name is Jesse Lempiäinen. I'm based here in Helsinki, Finland. I did my time like a good 90% of everyone that's ever worked in mobile gaming and lives in Finland. So I did my time at Rovio, working as a product marketing manager, primarily supporting and launching new games, which is part of the reasons why I'm having this talk here today. After a while, though, I jumped the ship and joined Geeklab with my co-founders as the CEO. And at this company, what we do particularly is help new game companies or existing game companies to launch new games profitably, which is why we're again having this talk today. So I'm going to go through quickly why do we need to change? What are the sort of main three conflicts that I sort of seen in this industry? How we can fix it, and then to also leave you guys with something very, very tangible. Also, how you can do it. So actually share some examples. And yeah, I'll be then on Discord as well in case any questions come up, and I'm sure we'll probably have some time for Q&A at the end of this as well. All right, let's jump right into it. So why do we need to change? Well, starting with the obvious, making games is super fun, and that's why we're all doing it. And it's a very, very solid, over $100 billion business. But with that, it also comes with the fact that there's about 1 million mobile games in the market right now, which is why majority of the new game launches fail. Matter of fact, out of the top 10 games that were launched, top 10 games right now in the United States, so only one of them was launched in 2023-ish, which is Monopoly Go, obviously with its great success. So as you can see, it's very, very hard to crack it with mobile and with console. And the successful launches in the new era will have two weapons sort of in common. One is that they're either from like very big billion-dollar companies, or they have a very, very, very strong IP. And majority of the successful launches happen to have both of these things. So both the billion-dollar company and the strong IP. So if you don't have either one of those, so we have to kind of rethink a bit like how we launch these games if we really, really want to break into the vault. A bit of a background story as well. So it was year 2018, and we were releasing this game called Angry Birds Dream Blast, which at Rovio, which we can classify as a successful, extremely successful launch, as it made it, and it still is in the top 100 games in grossing in United States. But what you might not see from the outside is that for us to get there, we had to fail a couple of times. So we had plenty of games that we tried. We lost money. We tried again, lost more money. Tried again, lost all the money. We were left with no money at all. And luckily, Angry Birds Dream Blast came to the rescue, and then a lot of money came back. Obviously, this is not the real case. Rovio did not run on money. It's a big company. It just made for a bit of a better story here to present it like that. But in short, the point is that for us to get Dream Blast, though, we still had to fail multiple times for us to get to that point where that game was a great success. And Rovio, being a great big company, could afford to try multiple times. Then we started Geeklab, and we were in a situation where we had no features, nothing very, very tangible yet. And at the same time, we had absolutely no money. That bank account was on the other side. It was net negative. So we had to really figure out like how we could actually, make it without any money. How can we actually afford to fail when we're not having any money? Which is why we then ended up like literally developing all of our features right in the front of the users. So whenever the user said, "Hey, we're planning on doing some stuff on Huawei App Gallery," we jumped right into it and coded that feature right in front of them with them, whilst the platform was out. And with that, we were able to kind of learn very, very quickly which are the features that really brought traction and could help the game developers to achieve what they wanted, and which were the ones that like made absolutely no sense. As an example, the marketing funnel was a thing that I thought that would take us to 100 million. No one used it even once. It was a very, very bad feature. So all of this led me to sort of think retrospectively about this entire way that we've been launching games, and I realized there are like truly like three main conflicts that I see, big problems that I see in the way that we're doing it right now. First of them is that we say that we do it for the players, but honestly, we're actually developing the games for ourselves by ourselves. And here's sort of a summary of a traditional way of building games. Like I'm sure there's some nuances and different companies work it in a bit of a different way, but this is more or less traditional way on how things go, specifically in a bit of a bigger company. So we have this sort of flight path, this linear path, whatever we want to call it, where the first section is the initial idea. And the milestone here to get from the initial idea to production is to truly validate internally, like, is this game fun? Is this like something we actually enjoy when we play it? And is there a market potential for this game? So we do like a bit of research and understand like what the actual market potential could be. If all of those boxes sort of tick and make sense, so then you might be able to move towards production, during which then the next step before you can kind of soft launch the game is to validate the game with some very early market tests, seeing like if people actually respond to the game the way you want it, and also like technical tests to see that everything is actually working when you get some users actually playing the game. If all this works, we move to soft launch, where it's all about figuring out how to acquire users cheaper than you end up like actually getting money of them. Yeah, lifetime value, as soon as it's higher than the cost per install, then you're sort of good to go to a global launch, at which then it's a story of continuous live operations and optimizations and events and DLCs and whatever you want to do to extend the lifespan of the title. But when we look at this thing, we immediately can notice two main issues, or one main issue. First is that like everything here, the initial idea and this production part, that's all internal things. You might have done like a market research, but you never really validated those things, only towards the end of the production. And that's quite a long time already, like spending time, money, and resources into developing the game. Whereas only after that, you truly start to actually develop that game with the users. There was a talk earlier today about Baldur's Gate. I'll tap onto this a bit later as well, where it was perfectly mentioned that they actually had the game out for like 3 years or what in beta, which is a class example of building the game with the audience, and it became a success. But most normally, this is sort of unfortunately how it goes. It comes with this issue too. So the further you go, the higher the cost gets. So the later you fail, the more expensively you fail. Whereas if you find that the thing that you're building unfortunately isn't going to work the way that you're currently positioning it and building it, so if you fail early, you get to try twice for the same amount of money and resources that you would for only one try if you figure those things out later. Here's a case study of an example of what happened. So we had this game called Phoenix Rangers back at Rovio, and it was a puzzle RPG game, very heavily focused on the characters. So we thought that, okay, with having different character art styles, that could really impact the marketing figures as well as the engagement of the game itself. So we ran a series of different character art styles, and we ended up actually finding out that this particular art style performed like 38% like better than the original art style. So that would mean like a huge deal in terms of your marketing KPIs, and then it's obviously reasonable to think that those would translate into the actual in-game KPIs as well. The only issue was that we ran this at this part at the very end of the soft launch, so it was unfortunately a bit too late for us to do all the changes. It already costed us too much, so the game never had a chance. The other one is this: we want to collaborate internally, but we mainly have 2 separate units without connection. If you're a smaller studio and you don't have this issue yet, I still want you to think about this so that you won't have this issue later either. So we truly have 2 separate units with 2 different timelines. Game team's involvement obviously starts from the very, very first day and goes throughout the history of the game, whereas the central teams that are typically the sort of external vision deliverers, like they only come in like bits and parts only towards like the end of the soft launch. It's very, very much involved. So whereas the game team's vision is very much internal, guided by the external data points that are provided by the central units. So typically the central units come in way too late for all of those like very, very important metrics to be taken into account whilst developing the game. And lastly, the smallest decisions have the biggest impacts. For this, I have another case study. So we're working with this game company, a newly founded game company. They wanted to make a crossword puzzle game. They had a very small team, and they needed insights on market, of the market potential. So what we did a bunch of market research. We figured out that, hey, wait a minute, not a single crossword game is having like proper meta elements in it at the moment. So we conducted a study in the United States and figured out that people in states love dogs more than they love cats. So we made this very nice looking dog mascot and had that as one version of how the game actually could sort of look like. And while on the side, you can see another version of another hypothesis that we built, which was that we'll just make a plain newspaper looking sort of UI of the game, as that's kind of how people typically have been playing these type of word puzzles in real paper. So a very basic test, but in short, if the dog here would win, that would mean that from features point of view, the game team would have to focus a bit more on meta, sound effects, visual effects, and therefore like hire also like a 2D visual artist, maybe a narrative designer if the meta really, really takes off. And then regarding the marketing metrics, we would find those out again during the soft launch. Whereas if we would go with the newspaper looking thing, then the full focus would be just on the crosswords and also maybe some social features that you can add on top of it, meaning that the team would need to hire additional level designers, social features developers, and so on. And again, for marketing metrics, we would be able to find those out during soft launch. But because we actually did this test like in the very first second of the initial idea phase, so we were able to figure out that with this newspaper thing, we need to go with this because it's twice as effective as the dog one. So apparently people didn't love dogs that much. So it was twice as effective, meaning then that the whole point was to focus then on the crosswords and social features and hire the type of personnel that you can see up there. So yeah, to sum it up, we say we do it for the players, but we're really developing it by ourselves. We want to collaborate internally, but we typically have 2 separate units without as good of a connection as we should have. And lastly, the smallest decisions that we make, sometimes subconsciously, may have like the biggest impact of imaginable. So how can we fix it? First, there's not a single secret worth hiding from your audience. 1 million games out already. That's already quite a lot of different games. And whatever combination of different things you've thought of, most likely someone else has as well. And I can't remember who it was. Maybe Steve Jobs that said that like an idea though is like an idea itself is nothing. Like that's only 10% of the thing. Even no matter how good the idea is, 90% of the thing comes from the actual execution as well. So truly, you just go ahead, show it, test, and learn. Based on the things that you can run. So instead of thinking like developing a game like a flight path with accelerating touch points that you have with the audience, instead think of it as a loop. So you do things, you seize up the market, you validate the insights, you come up with this brilliant idea that like puzzles and dogs equals a lot of money, whereas you run the test and you figure out, no, that's not actually the way you go. You test and validate and you learn. This is the top type of mentality that will allow you to launch successfully. I'm going to share a few examples so that this will make it a lot clearer for you guys. This is the Baldur's Gate reference as well. So let's imagine that we would be making a game. We would take in like it would be a mobile game. We'd take the amazing like gameplay features that the Diablo Immortal has built in and porting the game into mobile, whilst remaining with the extremely immersive and extensive storylines and everything that Baldur's Gate 3 had to offer. And we'd build this in Unreal Engine 5 to give that like a very, very crisp look. So this would be our idea. Instead of shooting the dark though, what we would do is we would actually invest a bit more effort and some money in the beginning to know a lot better with this loop mentality in our minds. Short disclaimer, it's not free, it requires effort, but it's definitely worth it. So what we could do, again, the very, very first second, we would be able to create an ad that would kind of capture the whole thing that we're now trying to do. So here you can see it's sort of a top-down view, wizards and warlocks, assemble your party and venture forth in a cinematic RPG. All right, it kind of gets some of the ideas that we had in mind already in one particular ad. You would run that ad in Meta, and anyone that would click that ad would then end up on a survey where we explain that, hey, super dope that you got here. Unfortunately, the game isn't out yet. But if you answer these questions here below, you can affect like how we actually end up developing the game. And at the very end, you'll get a link to our very, very exclusive Discord community that we'll have already at this stage. So a test like this would set you back like around $1,250 if done like with a good scale in the United States. But with this, you'd be able to get early insights if there is any traction in the idea that you have. And on top of that, what types of things the users that like actually resonated with this idea, what types of things they would want to have. And on top of that, you would even have like a earliest Discord members as well that you could continuously talk with. After that learning, we could take it forward. We could figure out like, okay, what would be the best art style that we could build this for? So we could have a version with realistic style, with pixel style, cartoon style, kind of this 2.5D style, and then throw a wild card and like a text-based adventure game there as well. And with this, we would, on top of the flow that we showed earlier, we could even add like a fake App Store landing page in between the ad and then the survey to even get more insights and understand not only the ad clicks, but also like how many users would actually want to hit that install button to get in there. Obviously, with more variants, this would cost you a bit more, but again, extremely valuable information you would be able to get from here. We could follow that up with a theme test. So we could see if like a fantasy theme would make sense, or if it's too saturated and a sci-fi game would make sense, or if we would try something completely new, like a modern game. And again, $5,000 setup would be the same, and you'd get immense amount of insights. And at the end of the day, when we've just with those 3 tests, so instead of ending up in a situation like this where we would just do a market research and based on that build our idea and think that this is the way to go forward, we'd end up in something that could look like what you see on the top right corner. Whereas with these 3 tests alone, we would be able to figure out that, okay, this was the particular art style, this was the particular theme, which is why this version of the game has a lot better chance of success. Lastly, you don't always have to follow exactly what's the best sort of thing in terms of marketing, but the point of running these tests is to give you the data points and understanding on the effects of your decision. So if you end up doing this decision, it means that we will have a bit higher user acquisition cost. We might need to then do some things otherwise in the actual game design to sort of add up to it. Yeah, I think I have 1 minute left, so I don't know if there's too much time for Q&A. I'd like to thank from my end. You can add me on LinkedIn, and I'll be sure to also stay in Discord to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Thank you very much. I managed to take some pictures while you were talking. We had a great audience. Yes, we have to wrap up. We are gonna move on. I see there's the next speaker coming in, but I want to thank you so much for joining us, and to everyone who is there, because I see that there's questions coming in. Just a reminder that please join us on Discord. There's a good Q&A going on. My colleague is posting the link to Discord if you are not yet there, and Jesse is going to stay there for a little while to answer your questions. So bring up the questions. With that being said, thank you so much, Jesse, for
thank you very much
being with us today.
Thank you. Take care.